Welcome to the latest episode of the ActivateCX podcast, where we demystify and clarify direction when it comes to CX. I'm Frank Rogers, I'm your host, and I help brands grow with better CX, AI, and self-service. Today, our show is tackling data in the contact center. Let's go. To navigate today's business climate, you need actionable insights from your enterprise stack, and your contact center generates an incredible mountain of engagement data. Today, we are meeting with one of my favorite collaborators, Sherry Rajani. Sherry is the CEO of Code Creators, a 100-plus person boutique data architecture and software development firm in Toronto, Canada. Welcome to the show.
Frank. Thanks a lot for having me on today. Super excited to dive right in and talk about our topic for today.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, there's a lot to cover, I know. And I think probably first and foremost, I want to jump in with omnichannel and data. And Sherry, you know, like the contact center has very specific characteristics. One, we have multiple human channels. So we have voice and chat and SMS, and then we have all these different digital channels, everything from social listening to chatbots and voice related chatbots as well. So this is complex. And not only that, we have quality management and data that comes from assessing the conversation. We have workforce management, and now the interjection of AI and all the data around that. So maybe Sherry, you can share what those attributes mean to you around data acquisition and analytics.
So when you talk about omnichannel, honestly, there's a lot that you kind of think about, similar to what you said, Frank. It's about finding the balance of the human, the digital, about gathering data from the right sources, taking them through kind of the right data sets, visualizing them in the proper ways. Now, where you find a lot of challenges is trying to create kind of that unified experience across channels. Now, when you talk about a unified experience in the world that you live in today, you might have a conversation that starts on a chatbot on a website. It may move on to a voice interaction on a phone call, and it may lead to a booking on a mobile app. What's really essential in omnichannel is ensuring that you have context throughout that journey. So there's personalization that carries on from that chatbot to that voice interaction. And it's super important that you don't always ask the same information points from that customer again, because that can create frustration. We all have those examples where we may call a bank and they push us from department to department. You have cold transfers that take place, and it builds frustration. Consumers don't want to repeat themselves, especially not in the world that you live in today. Other things to really think about is data complexity. Now, you want to make sure that all the data that you have from all of your different touch points are all in one place. You want to ensure everything is real time. You want to ensure you have no real silos and data moves smoothly from your digital channels to your human channels. Now, again, a lot of people are moving towards AI, but you really have to strike a balance between the human and the digital. Using AI could mean providing more scalable solutions, 24/7 support, but that empathy and that understanding really comes from a human touch. So you want to ensure you have kind of that perfect balance of the two. The other thing to kind of think about when you talk about customization and customizing experiences is the debate of privacy versus personalization. Now, it's very, very important to have a personalized campaign, personalized targeting, but it's also really important to ensure that you meet data security regulations, you adhere to privacy regulations, and more importantly, the ever-evolving regulations, things like GDPR and other political regulations that you really need to think about. And lastly, kind of again within the omnichannel space, is ensuring you keep up with technologies and training. So you have new solutions that come out every day. You want to make sure you stay ahead of the curve. You want to ensure you invest in training. One of the examples we often talk about is there are still some airlines today that use things like voice prompts. And what that means is when you want to change a flight, you spend 30 minutes yelling on the phone trying to speak to someone human. Now, if you invest in the right types of solutions, that experience will get a lot smoother and it'll become a lot easier to keep that customer without frustrating them. So just some points to kind of think about within the omnichannel world.
That's a lot. And I think that for the most part, people want to look at data in a simple way, but the complexity of it and the increasing complexity of it works against that thought and that desire. And maybe the contact center is not an easy subject. In fact, the lack of data insights is the number one pain point for contact center operators and business leaders alike. It is a serious problem to be solved. And companies want automation. They see that as part of their future. They see that as part of gaining efficiencies. But before you can execute on that mission, you need to understand the data first. There is a first step. This compounding of voice data, digital experiences, maybe you can speak a little bit to what happens as you're driving hundreds and thousands of lines of data and its relationship to complexity.
So again, kind of like you mentioned, a contact center has a lot of different types of data. So it has a lot of expansive data streams now. You have call data, chat data, email data, other types of interactions. The challenge there is not only having all those different types of data collected, but storing it, managing it, and retrieving it in a very effective way that can help you with future visualizations and decision making. And this is a very big struggle that a lot of organizations face. And it's not just the different types or the volumes of data, it's also multifaceted data types. Now, what that means is you could potentially have voice recordings, you could have transcripts, you could have chat logs, agent notes. Processing, analyzing that kind of data requires very specialized tools, very specialized guidance. Some of the ways that you can make your life easier is by using integrations that you have available today. So in a use case, let's say you're using a RingCentral contact center. Now, how you can make your solution a little bit more robust is potentially integrating with something like Microsoft Dynamics. What that allows you to do is you can now make and receive phone calls right out of Dynamics, allowing your agents to put notes within Dynamics. And now you have a central customer profile, all calls, all information recorded in that one place. What this helps you with is also you avoid things like channel fragmentation. So one of the issues that you have today, again, just thinking about volume and complexity, is you have a lot of different channels of data. Now, you may think, how do these channels talk to each other? Surprisingly, in a lot of solutions today, they won't talk to each other. You would need to build smart integrations. You would need to think about smart APIs that can really connect those things together. And that's where you have solutions like a customer data platform around that can help you connect those various sources of data together. Other really important things within kind of volume and complexity is really thinking about real-time data. Now, in order to make your decisions, you may need real-time data today, right now, maybe to think about how many agents that you want to employ in your particular contact center at every given hour. If you have a very high call volume, you may need to increase or reduce that workforce. So there's a demand for real-time data now. But again, with the volume and complexity of data, the challenge that you're presented with is, what does that data actually mean? You need to think about how you really slice and dice that data and really take out meaning for it. Within the data world, Frank, you and I always talk about context. And
Right.
in a lot of solutions today, even in the reporting solutions that you have, context is often missing. You have large volumes of data that you're looking at a very high level, and you're making sweeping decisions around your business without really thinking about the context of it. Like a customer complaint that you get, is that a genuine complaint? Conversations that are taking place within the contact center, what's the sentiment behind them? So you need to really think about the context to really make the smart decisions that would help you in the longer term. I'd actually like to share some dashboards that might help kind of further our conversations as well. I have a dashboard that we created for a couple of clients. And what's interesting in this particular example is you actually have all of your different contact center metrics placed in one space. You have the ability to slice and dice your data. So you can select different date ranges you want to work with your data on. You can select a particular branch. You can really drill down to phone numbers. And at a high level, it gives you all the KPIs that you might need: inbound calls, abandoned calls. You also have the ability to see all of your real-time active calls. What's also really interesting here is you can actually look at busy hours. Now, what busy hours allow you to do is you can actually see the time of day, the time of week that users tend to be busy. And again, this comes back to contextual data, understanding that, hey, maybe 11 a.m. is a busy time. That would allow us to have a higher workforce at that period. Taking a look at after hours or before hours reports would allow you to make a lot of insights as well. You also have compiled reporting that you can do. And all compiled reporting really does is it gives you a breakdown of information based on a particular branch or based on a particular segment. What's also really interesting about Power BI and dynamic visualizations is all of this data can be secured. So depending on who logs in, you can give them a completely different customized feed of information present.
Sherry, what you're really describing is really one part art and one part science. It's the nuance of understanding the data inside of that system, and then also knowing how to correlate that data with information from other systems. And maybe that is a good lead in to how the enterprise stack plays in. We know that for senior executives, they have a high level view of keeping customers, getting customers, being sustainable as an enterprise. They're looking at numbers around customer attrition, net new business. They're looking on the financial statements at gross margin, revenue, EBITDA, all of these things at that level. But as you move down below and we talk about actionable insights, we start to run into challenges and the fact that the contact center data should not be siloed, but often is. Those challenges are compounded by the fact that most organizations maybe have over 100 different marketing apps in their CMO stack. And there are dozens of productivity technologies that are aggregating data. Maybe that's O365 and others. And then our customer facing people on CRM technology. And so we've talked about all of this, and there's a drive to normalize data, to use data to reinform other applications, to drive automation. But it's a challenge. So getting to the numbers, and maybe you can share some of your thoughts on customer data platforms, ID resolution, and how you go through the process of taking into account integration.
So if we kind of break that down, Frank, so we talk about having diverse software origins. What I mean by that is in your contact center, you may have data that comes in from a lot of different systems, or data that exists in a lot of different systems. You have CRMs, call recording systems, chat platforms, a very vast ecosystems of solutions. The way we would address that or handle that is using maybe more Microsoft-centric solutions. What I mean by that is utilizing more Microsoft-based tools. So taking advantage of solutions like Dynamics 365, taking advantage of solutions like Teams, Azure, and doing integrations between these solutions. So there is a seamless integration and docking between these two systems. We want to make life of data transfer between platforms a lot easier, and going native in terms of Microsoft solutions is a very good way to do that. One of the issues that you face is data consistency. So
Hmm.
different data in different systems. Now, when you move that data over, you have the potential of data discrepancies, data loss. How you ensure seamless data flow is, again, thinking of the extract, transform, load engine that you might use. Now, within the Microsoft space, you have Power Platform, and within Power Platform, you have a very strong tool, Power Automate. Now, using Power Automate, you can create workflows that ensure data consistency.
Hmm.
You can create backups of those workflows as well. So whenever we do data-driven workflows, pulling data from one system to another, the architecture that you have to build is picking a good solution provider like Microsoft, and B, utilizing those solutions well enough to create backups and backups and backups to ensure that you never lose any data. We spoke a little bit about the real-time synchronization. Now, again, with the Azure space, you have data lakes available. You have Azure Synapse available, which is your entire cloud-based warehouse solution. What these allow you to do is you can compute very large amounts of data at fairly competitive pricing. You could even argue the pricing is fairly low given the output that you get. And you can take all of that and you can pump very strong insights very, very fast. There used to be a time when scalability would be a concern. We spoke a little bit about volume. Now, you have data that comes in for an hour, a day, a month, a year. A lot of organizations want comparisons for year over year, multi-years over year, the past 5-year view. The way that you get through these scalability concerns is, again, using the right platform, having the right data lake, using the right Azure service. We spoke a little bit about the customer data platform a little bit earlier. Now, how does a CDP really help you? When you talk about diverse types of softwares, when you talk about consistency issues, a CDP plays a central role in alleviating those specific concerns. It would connect that customer that's present in 5 different systems in one central place where their ID is resolved, where you can actually understand a customer experience that may have taken place in email, and you can correlate that to the next action that you might need to take in your CRM. So that CDP would really bring things together. Another really important thing today is security and compliance worries. Having the right solution, the right SaaS stack, maybe a Microsoft CDP, is all of those solutions have state-of-the-art compliance and security built in, and you can customize the security really based on your organization. You can give your executives the access that they need, you can give your marketers the access they need, and the solution stays very controlled, and of course your data stays very secure and private as well.
I like that. So much of the CDP is very events based. It has the ability to drive journey. And so many of the applications that roll out today have 2 components, especially in the marketing realm: journey management and some form of AI. And yet it is still fractured. And what you're talking about is a much more holistic approach to managing data, to having that data be able to reinform and drive processes across all the different enterprise stack levels. It is almost an end state that seems to be in a perpetual flow when it comes to normalizing that data and making decisions around that data. We have to have quality. And so we know that Eskimos have 1,000 words for snow. And it seems like in the contact center industry, you might have 50 ways to describe and measure abandonment alone.
Yeah.
What insights can you provide to practitioners in addressing this challenge?
So in cases like this, it's really important to understand like where you currently stand today. Taking a look at the infrastructure and the architecture that you have available today, understanding where it's lacking now. Given the architecture that you have today, you may have a problem of inconsistent data capture, as an example. You may be using different tools that have different capturing metrics that can lead to discrepancies in data collection, maybe discrepancies in reporting. One of the things that we've noticed ourselves is a lot of different tools will provide you different APIs.
Mhm.
You may have an API that gives you detailed logs, and you may have an API that gives you summarized logs. Now, the assumption would be that the data for those two should match up. Now, the real life case is that it doesn't match up, and you may think that there's something wrong with those APIs, but when you dig a bit deeper, you realize the context behind them is a little bit different. So, understanding like where data is inconsistent and understanding where data is just different. And it kind of comes back to selecting the right tool that you use to pull that data, and really understanding the right APIs. Like when we've worked on data projects, the data dictionary alone for every solution provider is massive. So working with the right solution provider who gives you the right context and an understanding is very, very important in avoiding quality issues.
Mhm.
Other things to kind of think about is like data decay. Now, when you talk about data over a very large period of time, often that data may become outdated. The customer's preferences might change. Again, where CDP might come in handy is it can help you ensure that the data from all of those different streams stays up to date, to ensure that cross-functional data is present in every single system. It can allow you to build a much deeper marketing strategy to avoid problems of data decay. The one thing that we haven't talked about so far is human error. And of course, that's very common. We are humans, we will make mistakes. When you have manual data entry or categorizations, you have the chances of errors. You need your system built in a way to encounter those errors, to tackle those errors, to think about how you can minimize those errors. But if you're living in a world where you feel like human errors don't exist, again, you're not understanding data in the right way. Other things to kind of think about is incomplete records, and this comes back to our APIs again. You may have real-time the data that you pull right now. That real-time data may not match with the real-time data that you pull in another hour. Now, again, you may think there's something wrong with the API, but what you really have to think about is when you pulled the results in hour one, there were still some calls ongoing. There may have been some calls that were still being categorized. When you pulled it again in hour two, the data would change a little bit. So whenever you're taking decisions, it's very important to kind of have that margin there, that you understand that data might differ. Having these kinds of understanding will avoid making very rash decisions and will lead to much smarter moves and decisions. Lastly, just duplication, Frank. When you have so many different systems, you're talking about similar data that might be coming from some of these platforms. And when you have duplication, it's very important in the architecture that you set up or the data lake that you may create. You have processes in place to really address that duplication, reduce that duplication, or at least provide some context to it. So when you're making decisions, you're not necessarily making it based on those duplicates.
The data challenge is solvable, but there are a lot of moving parts, from what might be customizable reports that export out to APIs that are delivering real-time and historical, that are delivering raw data at its root, summarized, aggregated data. You keep using the word context. I think that is a big part to all of this. You really have to understand the platform technology that you're working with, what that data dictionary looks like, what the state of that data looks like. There are a lot of challenges, and I think these are just realistic challenges. And obviously, in your experience and with your teams, you need to bust through these limitations. And I like to a lot of times quote Marcus Aurelius. He said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." And that's more of like an attitudinal type of thing. My sense is that this type of good attitude when aggregating data from your contact center and doing integrations with applications, developing a customer 360, any of these particular tasks that you're working on, you have to have that sense of you will experience these problems. And maybe you can share, how you and your team respond to these challenges and give some insights into what to expect in terms of this misalignment.
Honestly, Frank, it comes down to really working smart. So, understanding where the industry and the market stands today, understanding where the tools and technologies stand today, and utilizing the best solutions that you have available. If I go back to sharing my screen, I can maybe walk through another example. When we talk about limitations as an example, there are quite a few things that you can think about, but customization is one very large one. So the constraints that you have when it comes to customizing your data or getting the right data set that you need. That's where consultants like us come in, where we can actually help pull the data from some of those siloed sources, put them together, and create very actionable insights for you. For example, the dashboard that you have in front of you has a lot of very interesting slicers available. You can filter by particular shift, you can filter by particular agent, you can filter by skill, you can filter by time, day, team, point of contact. You can look at properties, branches. What this allows you to do is one dashboard can now actually serve a lot of different purposes. If the marketing manager wants a bit of information, they can come here and filter the way that they want. If a particular branch wants some information, they can come and filter it the way that they want. They have the ability to see really kind of trends over a day. If I quickly move over to another visual, and the reason I really like that particular visual is it gives you a bit more of a comparative view. So when you talk about a comparative view, it's really getting an understanding of performance over time. So this could be comparing 1 week to the week before. This could be having easy KPIs available for monthly comparisons. You could have year-over-year comparisons. It's by creating smart solutions like this, Frank, that you overcome some of the limitations. We spoke a bit about data granularity as well. So there may be systems that don't have a lot of very, very granular data. Working with consultants, you can actually take some of that data, maybe get some of the raw data and learn to aggregate it yourself. A lot of these companies and contact centers will give you access to raw data as well. And once you have the raw data, how you aggregate it is completely up to you. So what we often do is kind of work with the client to understand exact needs and then do aggregation ourselves in order to get them the right type of data with the right context, allowing them to kind of make those right decisions whenever they want.
And so what you're doing so much with this right here, Sherry, is you're building the architecture, the data lake, and the processes for aggregating that data and being able to bring perspective at specific points in time, because we do know that some of this data, performance data especially, and anything that might be an inflection point up or down inside of the contact center needs to catch the eyes of contact center managers immediately. So there's a lot to that. So I love how you broke that down. Let's talk about the rise of AI and reporting in general. And the future is upon us. A lot of people say, in the future, we will be doing this. I feel if you're not on top of your data and reporting right now, you are behind. And if you're not bringing AI into your business with a strong hypothesis and a starting point with declarative user stories, you are behind. So Sherry, you sit at the crest of this data wave, and not just data, but how you use the data, how you activate the data through automation. Where do you see this going?
So AI, of course, is the future, and the future is today, very much like you said, Frank. But it's about the smart implementation of AI. We've actually seen a lot of customers use AI for the sake of AI, where they want to stay with the market. Our job as, again, advisors and consultants is to understand processes that could use optimization and then use kind of the right implementations of AI to help in those. Some use cases kind of within contact center could be automating the process of cleaning your data. So let's say one of the use cases is that you have is data inconsistencies or redundancies. You can use AIs to ensure those are identified, those are addressed, allowing you to make, again, faster and better decisions. You have the world of predictive analytics. That's one of the most exciting ones, where you could have a visualization in front of you, very similar to the ones I shared, where you can ask your visualization to the question around future analytics, predictive analytics, and you would get some really good answers. So now you're not looking at year for year in the past. You can actually plan for the future based on historical data that you've gotten. Real-time insights will get faster and better with just the capability that AI provides you to ingest and process data. You might actually be able to get more insightful information available much faster. Another buzzword that we have nowadays is NLP, so natural language processing. Now, what NLP can actually do is it comes back to that point of context. It can take a voice recording, or it could take a transcript, and it can actually give you actionable insights based on that. Now, when you do that at scale, you not only save a lot of cost because there's no one that needs to really listen to those and take out those insights, but now you're getting access to data points that you never had before. You'd be able to understand sentiment at a level that maybe didn't even exist for you before. So again, the smart implementations or the correct implementations don't necessarily have to be very expensive. They have to give you a competitive edge based on the infrastructure that you have today and where you're looking to get to tomorrow. Other simple things, again, that we've touched on a little bit today, as well as just having those more advanced integration capabilities. As AI grows, as your cloud-based solutions and vendors grow, you're going to have the process of systems talking to each other be a very, very normal thing. It's not going to be a challenge anymore to connect one system to another. It's almost going to become understood that if you have two systems, they always talk to each other. So again, a huge opportunity in the market for people that are listening and for people that really want to go a little bit further than they have before.
It appears there's a cost to inaction. There was a great statement made long ago. It was kind of put forward like this: is how do you open up a small business? You open up a big one and wait. And so that is fundamentally, I believe, how AI is going to impact organizations. And you're right, there is a starting point and there's a time to start. And I love the way you outlined that. It just seems like everything is going to move faster and more precise. Sherry, thanks for bringing your experience, your wisdom, your skills, and overall, good nature to the show.
It was my pleasure, Frank. Thank you for having me as well. It was awesome.
Awesome. Fantastic. Okay, there you have it. Actionable data insights are critical, but not an easy get. If you want automation, you need to ensure your data is reliable, it's timely, it's relevant and actionable, and contextual, per Sherry. At the very least, going for self-service and automation, you will need structured and unstructured data that is fully on point and is curated in a timely manner. That's where we're going. Self-service, automation, labor arbitrage, all of these key terms are how we will balance the contact center, how we will drive sustainability in the enterprise. This is not the future. This is now. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please like and subscribe down below. And folks, if you want to be successful, let's go get it.